Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our 5th session. This is Karen at Commonwealth of Learning, welcoming everybody to this session. I'm glad that you have joined us. It is now 9 o'clock, and so we shall begin on time as usual. And so I want to start by sharing my screen so that we can all see what I'm seeing. Okay, thank you. So as I've said this morning, for me it's morning, this afternoon, this evening for many of you, we are going into the webinar series number 5. And this is on strategies to achieving gender equality. Now, in our previous webinars, we've kept talking about gender equality, and we have different understandings of gender equality based on our experiences, based on the definitions we have seen, based on the learning that we have. So as we begin this webinar, I want us to just think for a moment and have a very short discussion on what would a gender equal world look like to you. In other words, if you were told, imagine a world where there is gender equality, what would it look like to you? So I will I will pause my share and ask us to think about that. What would a gender equality world look like to you? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, are we here?
Yes.
I will repeat the question. What would a world where there is gender equality, or what would a gender equal world look like for you if you were told to imagine one? I see one hand raised. Whose hand is raised? Thomas? Thomas, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. For me, gender equality would mean communities where women fully participate in the development processes without these restrictions as of now.
Okay.
Where a woman, a girl would be able to express themselves fully, have control over their destinies. So for me, that would be like an equal world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Thomas, for that, where we're talking about where women are able to fully participate without restrictions and they are determinants of their own destiny. Thank you so much. Blessing?
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening, Blessing.
I would like to say for me, viewing a world that is, full of gender equality. For me, the first word that came to my mind was participatory.
Okay.
Because when there's participation from both sex, it's gonna be a beautiful world where each will be involved, each one with their goodness and their presence, and there will be freedom. People are, no matter what kind of sex you are free, and there's involvement. Most times when I view a society or places or family where there is full participatory of each one, there is always joy, there is always presence of love, not one side dominating or being domineering over the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blessing. Blessing is talking about full participation of men and women, but not just for economic or other purposes, but so that then there is harmony and more love and, as you said, really better quality of life within that family. Thank you, Blessing. George, let's hear from you.
Thank you. Good evening and good morning. To me, gender equality would mean the provision of equal or same opportunities to everyone, regardless of sex, so that that person or each of these persons should be able to contribute equally without regarding that this person is a female or is a male person, and also having the same opportunity so that everyone should contribute equally to the economic development of their particular country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, George. George is talking about equality of opportunities, meaning that then there is equality of contribution. And I think that that is very critical because it means that you're given the chance. And so once you're given the chance, then you're expected to make a contribution. But if you're never given the chance, then it cannot be demanded of you by your country that you pay tax, for example, if your country has not given you the chance for making a livelihood. If you've not had an education, the country cannot expect you to contribute, to debates on policy and so on, because you don't have an education. But immediately you have the opportunity, then you are also having the chance to contribute. Thank you very much. Anthony, you wanted to contribute again, or was your hand up by mistake?
Yes, just a little bit.
Go ahead.
That we recognize every person is involved and taking part in crucial decision making.
Okay. I like what it's three of you now because Thomas spoke twice, but I mean Anthony spoke twice, but it's incredibly important to think that when we are talking about a gender equal world, that for all of us, then it is looking like sorry. The slideshow is coming. Okay, so as I was saying, when we look at the contributions that have been given by all of you, then your participation is something that seems to be critical in a gender equal world. And a participation then means that everybody is involved in whatever is going on, so that whether it is social responsibilities, whether it's the economic life, whether it is the cultural life. But then we see that we are saying that this would be a gender world, which would be ideal for all of us, because we are not yet there. It means that when we are talking about participation, then there is a difference in participation. When you're talking about opportunity, there is a difference in opportunity. And some of these things have economic repercussions. Some of them have social repercussions. Some of them have repercussions or consequences for the way in which families live and behave. And so one of the ways in which the world has decided that it would be important to try and ensure there is gender equality is gender mainstreaming. You're going to read a little bit more about this in your module on gender mainstreaming. But it is important to understand that gender mainstreaming is like a river. Now, if you think of a river that is flowing, this river, when it is flowing, it usually starts from a mountain region. And when it starts from the mountain region, as it is going down the valleys and all the way to the sea or the ocean, this river starts getting bigger and bigger. Why does it get bigger and bigger? It is because that along the way, there are small streams that are joining this main river and contributing their water into it. Now, when the main river is flowing, if there is a small stream of water that has joined it, after that stream has joined the main river, you don't know the difference between the water from the stream and the water from the main river. And that is how gender mainstreaming is called mainstreaming, because we are talking about the main river is moving, but we want to bring in the small rivers that are not yet joined and make sure that when we finally end up with a gender equal world, we are not saying, oh, these are programs for women, these are programs for men, but we are saying that the concerns and the experiences of women and men can be seen or can be articulated in policies, programs, and practices. Why do we need to do this? It is in the answers that you have given of a gender equal world. When you look at a gender in an equal world, we are saying that in many times, why is my volume? Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because my volume button is playing from 0. I'm not sure why. The volume button keeps moving. Okay, so we're saying that we are having a need for gender mainstreaming. This means bringing in the concerns of women and men, ensuring that what are their concerns and what are their needs? Does a policy meet those needs? Does a program meet those needs, or does a strategy meet those needs? And the UN is very, very critical of the fact that when we are talking about gender mainstreaming, it is so that we do not perpetuate inequality, because a development program can actually perpetuate inequality. What do I mean? If, for example, you have a village or a community that does not have water, and in this community, women are the ones who normally fetch the water. If a water pump is put where it is inconvenient for women, that they have to walk even longer distances to go and fetch this water, yes, they're getting clean water. Yes, they always get water, but it increases their burden in terms of what they have to be doing. And so it perpetuates an inequality. When a development program is put up that does not take into consideration the needs and the way in which men and women work in an organization or in a community, then it can perpetuate inequality. Now, gender mainstreaming is needed, because it is a way that links to women's empowerment. And it is extremely important because many states or many governments don't have strategies to deal with systemic and structural issues. It means that these things that have been long going on, many states do not yet have strategies or ways to deal with them. And so they find that they are not able to deal with, example, let's take land rights, for example. Many states don't have a strategy to deal with the fact that land rights were not for women. And so they are struggling to find a way that is culturally acceptable within their countries, that is acceptable to the international instruments that they have signed on equality, and trying to find these balances. Some states don't have these strategies. Then secondly, there are very weak or inadequate mechanisms to hold states accountable for gender equality. When you take, for example, one of the tools for gender mainstreaming, that is affirmative action. Many times, affirmative action has failed in many countries because nobody is holding the government responsible for this, for effecting affirmative action. So we say that, for example, when you have a committee, there should be a balance of men and women. Not that they should be 50-50. But there should be a balance. But this is very hard to achieve, even at state level, because there is nothing that is holding a government responsible. So some of the tools that have been used for gender mainstreaming, as I've mentioned, affirmative action. This is very common in many countries, and especially in political processes, where they say, look, our parliament does not seem to have enough women in it. We're not hearing the voices of women. So they say, let us try and see how we can do it. Let us see how we can bring in women. And different countries have different ways of doing this. Another tool for gender mainstreaming is embracing diversity. Embracing the diversity that is within people in terms of gender identity, in terms of sexual identity, that is also a way of gender mainstreaming. And another one is equal opportunity in employment. So that when we want to employ people and we say, oh, okay, in this particular job that we are having in our institution or in our company, we have too many women. Can we say that when men apply for this particular job, they will be given an advantage? And it works vice versa, because in many, especially in managerial positions, when we don't have women, then a job will say that if you have the same qualifications, if you as a man and a woman have the same qualification, because we are trying to bring in more women as managers, then as a woman, maybe you get 1 extra point or 2 extra points because you showed up in a position where women are underrepresented. So gender mainstreaming is just a strategy, and it is a process. It is not something that any one institution can say we are 100% gender mainstreamed, or one country can say we are 100% gender mainstreamed. There are always issues, but more and more countries are moving towards the SDG 4 goals in terms of trying to ensure that there is gender equality. So the next strategy that we have is called advocacy. Advocacy is something that a lot of us in our organizations do. In state corporations, maybe not so much, but you are having people from non-governmental organizations, community service organizations, feminist groups that are lobbying states and governments for different things, for prison reform, for educational reform, for equality of opportunity, for recognition of diversity. So anything that we call advocacy is something that is very planned and deliberate, and it is a sustained act or process of pleading or arguing for a cause, for an idea, for a policy. People may advocate, for example, people may advocate their local member of parliament and say, there's a road here where our children cross to go to school. And there have been so many accidents on this road because it's a highway. There is nothing to show people that they need to slow down when they're driving past. So a group of parents or a group in the community may decide to go and advocate the local government and say, hey, you have to put up signs that are way before the school and say, up children crossing. You have to put up speed bumps that make cars slow down, or you have to put somebody, a policeman, that is going to be standing there at the times that children need to cross the road. That is advocacy. And the idea of that is a process to bring about change. So advocacy is always for change. We want to make a change in something that already exists, or where there is a gap in something that is existing. And advocacy goes to influential individuals or groups or institutions or states, because you cannot do advocacy for persons who do not have the power to make change. And so if you think back on our module on power, we said that there are people who have power to do things. These are people who are influential. And so when we are lobbying to make a change. Therefore, we are lobbying to the people who can actually effect this change. And lobbying takes many different forms. But the reason why we're doing lobbying, as I've said, is for change. And why are we looking at change? Why do we need to do advocacy? Now, there is this interesting picture which is on the interesting picture that is on the slide that you can see. I can see, I just wanted to check what is on the chat. Okay. So when we talk about, if you look at this picture, look at the part called the system, this square called the system. When policies and laws are made, usually they're what we call gender blind. In other words, they don't think about the men and the women to whom they are going to be applied. So you create a policy that is like a square box. And because you yourself who has created that policy, you can fit into the system because you're also square. Then you assume that the men and women to whom this policy is going to be applied should also be able to fit into the system. But here come the men and women in the community, and they are not square, they're round. And so even if they try to fit, they will have to squeeze themselves into that box, and parts of them will not fit. So we need advocacy because in many cases, Policies and programs and institutions are made to fit a certain group of people, but they do not consider everybody. Policy focuses on the majority. And I want to say that it is okay for policy to focus on the majority, because you cannot make a policy that suits each and every single human being in a country. Imagine if a country has 30 million people and you want to make an educational policy for each and every single child in that country. You're talking about 12 million policies or 15 million policies that are geared towards education. It will never work. So it focuses on the majority, and it tries to prioritize the system over people. But we are talking about in terms of implementation. That policy may suit the majority, it may suit the system, but there will always be people who will be excluded and discriminated. And this is where advocacy comes in. Where there is exclusion, where there is discrimination, because not everybody can fit into this square that is called the system, then we need advocacy. And this advocacy, what does it result in? If advocacy is successful, then it helps governments or institutions to say, okay, not everybody can fit into what we wanted. And so let's change one or two clauses in this policy, or let's add something in this policy or in this program to ensure that everybody fits. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a training that we conducted a few years ago. We were doing a training for cooperative officers. Now, cooperative officers are people who organize. When you have self-help groups, then the cooperative officers are the ones that are in charge of these self-help groups. So they are the ones that train them in financial literacy, they train them in digital literacy, they train them in how to conduct leadership and meetings and so on. So we had this huge group of cooperative leaders, and trying to make it gender balance, we invited a female cooperative officer and a male cooperative officer from each of the districts in which we were working. Now, so these male and female cooperative officers, they all came to about 30 people. One woman came with a baby. Now, the idea here is that we are trying to have a workshop that was going to last for a full week. And this woman had a 6-month-old baby that was exclusively breastfed. So she came with her baby, and she came with a nanny or a caregiver for that baby. Now, when the hotel was booked, it was only booked on the basis of the person or the officer who is going to attend. Now, the participants arrived a little bit like they arrived in the morning because they were having some orientation. And we, the facilitators, were arriving a little bit later in the afternoon. So we came in the afternoon, and those people who had checked in the participants had not checked in this woman with her baby and her nanny. Why? Because you are not allowed to be 3 of you in the room. And so it was a big issue, because here we were having a workshop that was on gender equality. And the very fact that this woman had a baby and someone to take care of the baby during the day when she's in the workshop, they were saying you have to be excluded. We had to put a case and show the organizers that you cannot exclude this woman on the basis of the fact that you are saying that we are trying to build a gender equitable world. We are saying that this woman, her baby is exclusively breastfed. If she misses out on this training, then how does she go back to her district, and what is she going to train people on? So the policy is designed for the majority. And in most times, the majority have no problem with the policy. But you cannot have such a rigid system that when there is a different person coming in, that this system cannot change. And so by making a small adjustment and saying, okay, let us put, because we already have a room for this woman, why don't we just put in an extra bed and then pay the extra in terms of boarding and lodging for this other extra person? It wasn't going to be much. And by doing so, the lady is at peace the whole week. She's able to breastfeed her baby, and she's sure that she's also receiving all the information from the workshop. So we need to think about some of these things when policies are being created. So the third strategy, remember we've talked about gender mainstreaming, we've talked about trying to ensure that there's advocacy, and then the third one is that we're talking about gender responsive budgeting. What is gender responsive budgeting? This is allocation of public resources from a gender perspective. And this is advocating for decision-making where we are trying to ensure that there is equity or fairness in distribution of resources between men and women. Last time we talked about factors of production. If you think about something like land, for example, as a factor of production, you will find that access to land is almost equitable in that women have access to land, men have access to land. But when it comes to owning that land as a resource, then there is a difference. Now, in terms of gender budgeting, in the same way, we are saying that there are public resources that are catered for or that they are given funds for. Now, if there is going to be fairness, then we have to think about gender responsive budgeting. And what is gender responsive budgeting or gender budgeting? Gender responsive budgeting considers the different impact or differentiated impact of spending and taxation on men and women. And that is because of their different situations. Let me give you an example. Think about taxation. In many countries, every year, because of the rising cost of living, taxes are always increasing. Now, if you look at the budget that is read out by the finance minister or the finance portfolio in your country in every year, you will see that there are certain things in that budget that are taxed. Now, when we tax essentials, for example, if we tax sanitary towels, if we tax contraceptives, if we tax antiretroviral drugs, vitamins, condoms, this has a different impact on men and women. When you tax essentials, for example, sanitary towels, if you tax sanitary towels, then it means that they become more expensive. But this is an essential that women need every single month. And that means that therefore, they are not, you start to price the sanitary towels out of the reach of women. If you increase a price by taxation, for example, of beer and cigarettes, of bread, these are things that people can have alternatives to. But when you tax things that are essential, like I've mentioned, antiretroviral drugs, if these are taxed, it means that the people who need this life-giving medicine are no longer able to afford it. So a gender budget is one that considers what are the different impacts of spending and taxation on women. Secondly, it uses an intersectionality approach, not an equality approach. Equality here, we're talking about sameness. We are not looking at equal as same, but we are looking at an intersectionality approach. I need education, but I also need to be safe going to school. So when we are giving money or allocating money to education, are we also allocating money for safety of the children going to school? What different safety needs do girls have, do boys have at primary school level, at secondary school level? So this is trying to improve conditions for women and other marginalized people. But it is important to remember that a gender responsive budget is not a separate budget. It's not like a country says, okay, here is the budget that we have for this country for this year, blah, 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 blah. Then we have another budget that is on the side that is only for women. No, it is one budget. But that budget takes into consideration the fact that when we are supplying medication, what kinds of medication are needed? And so the government goes back and says that we have 40 million people in our country. How many women, how many men, how many boys, how many girls? And that is why a government has to do a census. That is why a government has to record number of births and number of deaths. It has to record how many people are going into the school system at 6 years old. And that means that then they can be able to make decisions based on that. Sometimes it does not always mean that they do, but that is essential that if they have that data, then they are going to be able to do that. So we have, in summary, we have looked at 3 strategies. We have looked at gender mainstreaming, we have looked at advocacy, and we have looked at gender budgeting. Now, when we are talking about all of this, we are saying that they have different goals. Gender mainstreaming tries to transform societal structures. Gender advocacy tries for social change and accountability. In other words, making influential people in states or governments or management responsible for social change. And then we are also looking at social justice. So the social justice that we are discussing in gender budgeting, the social change in advocacy, and the social structures in gender mainstreaming, all of these form a circle where we are saying that these are the three main strategies or goals for social change. Now, in looking at these three strategies, therefore, we are saying that we are trying to say, let me just stop this for a minute. We are saying that when we are looking at each of these strategies, then we are saying that each of them has something that they can achieve in terms of social change. Gender budgeting is one of the most complicated because in many instances, excuse me, in many instances, gender budgeting is always infused into the main budget of a country. And sometimes it's difficult to see, okay, what are the special programs or what are the special ways we have considered those who are marginalized, those who have disadvantages, those who have disabilities, persons of gender diversity, how have all of this been considered? And so therefore, it falls to those who are doing advocacy to say, oh, okay, let us look at what it is in terms of advocacy that we can then do to ensure that this kind of budget that we have is meeting the needs of men and women. So we are trying to say, therefore, then that when we are talking about a gender mainstreamed world, it should be ideally a world where we are not saying, okay, women leaders, men leaders, female president, male president, or how many women have we brought into the organization? But it should be that everybody has the opportunity. And because everybody has the opportunity, everybody has the responsibility to ensure that it works or that it is actually going ahead. So gender mainstreaming, advocacy, gender responsive budgeting, these are the three strategies that you are going to find in your module, and you will be able to look at them and say, okay, how are these embedded into human rights? And they are embedded again into the same human rights of freedom, of right to life, of the right to association, of the right to a decent life, of the right to have livelihood. All of these then come back to the human rights aspect where we say that because you are a human being, you have the right to participate. Because you are a human being, you have the right to have no restrictions to that participation, whether it is in education, whether it is in livelihoods, whether it is in skills, whether it is in having a family that you know that my family is safe, my family is secure, my family have shelter, my family have food. All of these things are the ones that everybody is included and everybody has equal access to resources, but also everybody has control over the resources and the things that they need to ensure that their lives are going on. Stop share. Sorry, today my screen just seems to be, my screen just has a mind of its own today. Okay, so what I would like us to wrap up with is my usual, because today we have a very short seminar or very short webinar, ladies and gentlemen. because of the pressures of some things that I need to be able to do. So unfortunately, we've not had a very long discussion, but I hope that we enjoyed the discussion at the beginning. And so I want to wrap up with this slide from Drew Gilpin-Faust. Drew is the president of Harvard University. And one thing she says is very critical to what we have talked about in terms of gender mainstreaming. And she says that I am not the woman president of Harvard. I am the president of Harvard. Because many times when you are the first female to enter into a position, they keep referring to you as the first woman president, the first woman president. And Drew is very, very categorical in that she is not the woman president, she is the president. Because we don't keep saying this is a man president of the country of, for example, we don't say the man president of the Gambia. We don't say the man president of Ford Foundation. We just simply call them the president. We don't call them the man CEO of a certain company. We simply say the CEO. So Drew Gilpin-Faust is saying what we have been saying. In a gender mainstreamed society, there would not be just that you're a woman leader. It would be that you're the leader. And so Sheryl Sandberg in a book called Lean In says, in the future, there will be no female leaders. There will just be leaders. And this is what I want us to have as a takeaway from this module, in that the strategies for social change are trying to normalize the fact that women and men can be in all positions, can fully participate, can be anything that they want to be, and we don't find it strange. It becomes the norm, so that we are not talking about women leaders, we are simply talking about leaders. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop my share and maybe just check and see what is in the chat in case there is something that somebody has added. The world of gender equality is a world with equal opportunities to resources, a world living with harmony. That was from Maria Nashpai. Ruth has said, I'm looking at a gender equal world where everyone is included in decision-making, in economic opportunities, equal access to resources, and involvement and development activities. So I want to urge you all very much. Please go through the module. Again, I want to remind you, if you know of somebody who joined and has dropped out, kindly tell them that this is an exciting course and that they will benefit from going through the modules. And as usual, if you have any issues, any problems, kindly let us go to Sandy. She's always ready to help, always willing to help. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good evening, have a good morning, or have a good afternoon, wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.